I always find it interesting whenever someone tells me that anything non-LEGO is stolen and bad. They usually claim that the designs are taken from someone else, the pieces are lower quality, the instructions are bad, or a plethora of claims that have clearly come from people who haven't actually dealt with non-LEGO. If you clicked on this video, then you know I'm going to be talking about the Cobi Titanic set. This is set number 1916, I believe, and it is 2,840 pieces. Really quick, there are actually multiple versions of the Titanic, including one that comes with the iceberg, which I think is kind of poor taste, but this is the most common one I've seen. I actually managed to get it on sale from Walmart for only $80. And one thing I really like about this is that it actually tells you the scale it is on the box. This is 1/300th scale. Now, this is actually a completely original design from Cobi. If you're watching this later in 2021 or beyond, then supposedly LEGO is actually coming out with a version of the Titanic themselves. So please don't try to tell me that this is stolen from them or anything, because this actually came out first, and by a while. The back of the box does show you some of the features, if you will. It shows you certain angles and historical photos. It even has historical facts about the Titanic here. You can pause if you want to read them, I'm not going to. There's also a picture showing you that you can move and rotate the propellers, which, knowing better said, are not called propellers on ships, but when I googled this, that's all I found. Along with another feature here, which isn't much, you can also then see the dimensions in both inches and centimeters. Again, if you want to see them, there they are. Now, before we get into the actual build, I do want to talk about Cobi just a little bit, since I wasn't really too familiar with it before this, and I'm not sure how many of you will be. Cobi has actually been producing LEGO-like building blocks since 1992. They've been around for quite a while and tend to focus more on military vehicles than anything else really right now. And when you open up the instructions, you are going to notice some similarities and some differences from LEGO. For instance, this build does have 3 instruction booklets. I don't really think it needs 3, but it does. And then there are 12 numbered bags because, yes, the set does actually come with numbered bags, evenly divided amongst them. And immediately beneath that, though, are some big differences you're going to notice from LEGO. They have a lot of similar pieces that when building the set, you're really going to want to make sure you get correct. They tell you to look out for them here, and then they also label them here and when used in the instructions if you ever need to double check. I will just say right now, it was actually incredibly easy to tell the difference, and I never needed to come back and double check or anything, but it's good to know that if you need it, it's there. One thing that isn't shown here though, is that Cobi uses different length plates than LEGO does. For instance, there are multiple 1x5 and 1x7 plates in this build, something that LEGO has never produced. And come to think about it, I don't really know why. I'm sure there's some sort of explanation for it, but those are definitely something you're going to want to double check when building this set. So how is this set? Well, as some of you may know, and most of you probably don't, for Christmas, my parents bought me a brand new light box, and by brand new, I mean a light box, because before then I wasn't using one. It is incredibly nice and does the job perfectly and covers most of what I need. Pretty much every ship that I have to show you, or a mock or whatever, I can fit in here comfortably. We can't use that today, and we're gonna have to go old school. This is the Titanic, and this does not do it justice. The name really fits the ship because this thing is ridiculously big, a lot bigger than I expected it to be, and it looks amazing. There aren't many LEGO sets in the world where someone would look at it and not realize it's LEGO. In fact, I don't think I own an official LEGO set that does that. The closest would probably be something like the Saturn V or even the Space Shuttle now, maybe the Sydney Opera House. This doesn't look like building blocks. I'm going to use the term LEGO because it's easier in this video, but please recognize that I'm not actually calling it LEGO. And it looks so good. Once this thing is finished, It really is a display model. That is 100% what this is, by the way, so unfortunately there's not too much to show. And even when you get a closer look, you still notice a lot of things because there are a lot of details on here. They clearly took their time designing this and wanted it to be as accurate as it could be. While I personally am not an expert on the Titanic and don't know too much about it, my girlfriend absolutely loves everything to do with the Titanic, and this thing got her seal of approval, which is enough for me. At the front of the ship, you can see that there are 2 anchors, one on the side of the boat and one on the front, and one thing that I did find really interesting with this build are these chains here. By the way, there is an anchor on the other side. Everything is mirrored, so I'm just going to be showing you this one side for most of the review. But this is one change from LEGO that's definitely going to change from person to person, because here you had to actually connect the individual chain links yourself. There's only 6 total between the 2 sides, so it wasn't too bad, and it's actually not that hard at all. It was just something that LEGO themselves don't do. Obviously there's this crane here, and you can see a lot of pieces that you don't get from LEGO. Like the crane is a piece of its own, or you can see like those dark blue bits on the side sticking up as well, or even like the vents here. And if we continue along the ship, then these pieces are used to make staircases, which I think are awesome. And then there's these things that the back of the box showed you can move. I think they're cranes or like for the lifeboats or something. Technically they are a play feature, but you know, no one's gonna play with this. And you can actually see the bridge here too. I love that they were able to do this and capture it and just make it look so good. Because even though I know that these were made with Lego or with building blocks, it doesn't even look like it really. Everything is so smooth. You do have the front mast with the crow's nest. This is where they first spotted the iceberg, and an American flag on top. Keep this in mind, we're going to be talking about these pieces. One detail that you probably already noticed are these lifeboats. These things are actually really cool. They're individual pieces, already pre-built, everything like that. There's no assembly with them, but they look really cool and they slide right on in. I don't actually know if there were any lifeboats in the higher level there by the first stack, but that's fine. There was one slightly annoying part with this build that was definitely repetitive, but thankfully it was only a single step, so it wasn't actually too bad, and that is obviously all of these windows. If I'm not mistaken, it was actually 2 steps because you do one side and then the other, but you do put all 48 of these in at the same time. And by the way, these are pieces that LEGO doesn't have either. They look like the back of headlight pieces, but the other side is exactly the same. It's just a 1x1 brick with a hole in the middle. And I also love these bracket-like pieces that represent the portholes. For some reason, the snot technique is one that I've seen a lot of people be divided over. Some people really like it, some people really don't like it, and it all comes down to personal preference, of course. When it comes to building with LEGO, regardless of what brand you use, a lot of people obviously want that to be known, so they don't mind studs being shown because it's the charm of LEGO. Other people would want a more professional quote-unquote look, and so they choose to go with the snot technique, hide the studs, and make things more smooth. I personally prefer the snot technique because I just think it looks better. But of course there's also the happy compromise like this of knowing when to use studs, which I mean technically is still the snot technique, but it was a really clever choice to use these pieces to represent those portholes. I love how this looks. Because what's really clever about it is that despite being building blocks, from a distance or even really up close, you're not going to notice that, even though you can see the studs. I do have to say one of the weirdest parts of this build are the stacks on top. All 4 are identical, except in how they connect to the rest of the ship, where 1 and 3 are the same and 2 and 4 are the same. They're a nice build, it's just a little strange that they can move so much, especially with the strings that we'll get to in a second. Also, they do include the glass dome. Underneath this was the famous grand staircase, which is not present in this build, by the way. There is no interior. Like I said, this is purely a display piece. And then there are also these tiles here meant to represent like sunroofs, I think. If you know what these are actually called, please do put it in the comments down below. I am blanking on it right now. And then of course, there are a few more lifeboats. The rear mast is very similar to the front, and on the top is a different flag. And if you didn't know, this is the flag of the White Star Line, the company that owned the Titanic. If we go to the rear of the ship or the stern, then you can see that there are more details. I will say that I missed a piece here. If you can tell where, kudos to you. It's already been fixed in real life, so don't worry about it. And again, I just have to say that I love that even with these small pieces, they managed to make everything so detailed. It really looks amazing. And yes, really quick, you can actually move the propellers and you can move the rudder back here, or whatever it's technically called. But you know what the most amazing part of this entire build is? And this is something that LEGO would never do on a build this big. Every single piece of detail is printed. There is not a single sticker in this entire build. All of these portholes along the front, the Titanic logo, everything is printed. Those flags, the glass dome, the skylights, all printed. And you know what else? A lot of the hull here are these giant tiles. And I mean big tiles. I don't even remember how big they were. There was at least like a 2x8. I think there was like a 4x8 in there. Big tiles to cover these sections that LEGO just would not make. And it leads to the ship looking as smooth and as incredible as it does. And there is a wonderful little stand for this as well, with another printed piece telling you, the RMS Titanic scale 1 in 300. The stand, though not directly built into the ship, they do combine and pretty much stick together once you do so. In other words, once the Titanic is on the stand, it's not going to fall off. I am going to talk about the two things about this build I did not like that are both directly related to cobi. First off, I don't like these strings. If LEGO ever makes a version of their own, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I really did not like these strings. You have to tie them on yourself, and while I literally spent about an hour just making sure that these were fine, you can tell that there's still some slack there and they're not as good as they could be. I do think having them really adds to the detail of the boat and making it look like a display model. I just don't know a better way to have done it so that it's not so bad for the builder. If you've ever worked with building miniature models, then you'll probably be perfectly fine with this, but if you're more used to just normal LEGO builds, you may find this a little frustrating. And the second thing that I really did not like, and this is just a personal preference, are how the instructions are done. There was never an issue of knowing what needed to be done or anything. The instructions in that sense are perfectly fine, and the build was smooth. But cobi does do that thing where any and all pieces from previous builds are grayed out or whited out, however you want to say this. For instance, here's when you're putting on all those bracket pieces that form the portholes, and when you flip the page you realize all of those are grayed out. Sometimes having that color difference is really helpful, but I also recognize that a big reason why I prefer it the normal quote-unquote way is because it's what I've always had. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this, but I do prefer how LEGO does their instructions. With all that said, there's one big question left. Is it sturdy? Well, yeah, this is an incredibly sturdy build. It's not gonna fall apart on you at all. For anyone who is wondering for any reason, no, you cannot break it in two. The only way to display it is as you see it now, and the build is incredibly well done, making sure that it can be and is as sturdy as possible. While some steps may seem like they're coming out of order, it's all done just to help give more strength to the final build. The quality of the pieces themselves are exactly like LEGO's, as I found no problem with any loose clutch or anything like that. In fact, I had quite the opposite problem where there was a few times I put the wrong piece in and had to take it off, and found it a little difficult to do so. The fit of these pieces are very snug, so you really do want to double and triple check that you're putting the right pieces down. But at least that means it's not gonna fall apart on me, and you know what? That's fine. Now the only thing I need to do is find a place to display this, because I really did not think it would be this big. In fact, I think I might actually start selling off some of my LEGO and non-LEGO collection. So if that's something you might be interested in, please do let me know in the comments down below, and of course let me know your thoughts about this build as well, or any other builds from cobi that you may have done. Please do remember to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw, and maybe even consider joining me on Patreon so I can do more custom builds or alternative builds like this one. I do want to send a huge thank you to all of my patrons who have continued their wonderful support, especially people like Nathan, who I deserve to thank so much more, and Jonathan and Project Elements. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.